Hello, welcome to this video. This is one I've wanted to do for a while. I'm feeling a bit ill today, but I'm going to do it anyway because I want to get it done before SummerSlam tonight, which I'm still very excited for, mainly to see Daniel Bryan versus John Cena. I want to talk to you about Daniel Bryan's WWE career, or Bryan Danielson's WWE career, and give you kind of a review of his career and stuff like that. So I'll give you some like stats and stuff, and then talk about what I think about it. Won't go into his indie career because there's so much to cover, but you know, needless to say, he'd been a huge kind of fixture on the indie circuit for like 10 years pretty much before he came to the WWE. In August of 2009, Ring of Honor announced that he had signed a deal with WWE, and he made his debut as a contracted wrestler for the WWE on January 4th, 2010 in a dark match prior to Raw defeating Chavo Guerrero. Funnily enough, that was the Raw that Bret Hart came back, so that's pretty cool. Later that week it was reported that Danielson had requested to go to FCW to work off some ring rust and acclimate himself to the new work environment. He made his debut at FCW on the 14th of January, and at the February 11th tapings he was renamed Daniel Bryan, and he later said he was given a list of 10 possible names to use, and Daniel Bryan was one of them. On February 16th, 2010, it was announced he would wrestle on the first season of NXT. So this is when I first kind of heard about it, and I used to wrestle myself, if you didn't know. And I started around 2004 doing it seriously. And around that time, the people who I was wrestling with and who I was friends with, they loved Ring of Honor, they loved all that indie stuff. And you know, I was always hearing about people like Austin Aries, Christopher Daniels, and Bryan Danielson, American Dragon, and all that kind of thing. But I never really seen him wrestle. The first time I think I saw him wrestle was at my mate's house. He had a DVD of some show, and it was Lance Storm versus Bryan Danielson. I quite enjoyed it, but it didn't really leave me with any lasting impression, because it was kind of I was still kind of developing my thoughts on wrestling while I was doing it and stuff like that. Because I think we've all gone through the period where we first loved wrestling purely for the spectacle of it and just purely for being like just a mark for it, and then you kind of learn about it and you just appreciate different aspects of it. So at that point I wasn't quite ready to enjoy Bryan Danielson, I don't think. Get a drink of water, sorry. So when I heard he was going to be on NXT, first of all I was like, what's NXT? And it sounded interesting, and of course the internet kicked up a fuss because you know, NXT had a load of rookies, and they were kind of guided by their pro, and Bryan Danielson's pro was The Miz, who couldn't be further from a pro in comparison to Bryan Danielson. You know, I like The Miz, but you know, especially at that point as well, he was just it was made to stir up some controversy, I think. And first NXT show, he wrestled Chris Jericho. Instantly I knew that this was a guy I was going to really enjoy watching. I loved the match against Jericho. He did this suicide dive, and Jericho kind of reversed it into a slam into the announce table, and you could see within seconds this big like purple welt just building up on the side of Danielson. But he kept on going, and he was injured for I think most of the run of NXT, and he went on to have a losing record of like 0-5. And I think I remember he wrestled on Raw at one point. Again, I'm not going to go through everything, but you know, he just was kind of failing on NXT, but it was almost designed that way. And I'm not sure whether they planned to have him feud with Miz, but it seems likely that they did. They had Michael Cole on the commentary back when he was really being a proper heel commentator, just bringing down Bryan all the time, and just like calling him a loser and just a nerd and just, you know, an idiot and everything. I remember they did some kind of like promo kind of contest or something. It was like you get 10 seconds to do a promo, and they kind of just cut him off after like 6 seconds. And it was kind of really annoying. Again, I'm not sure if it was a work or not, or whether they really were poking him and stuff and trying to get some kind of reaction. So yeah, I remember, I'm not going to go into the finer details of it, but he did this promo when he left NXT because he got voted off. And there's a great moment actually where he forearmed Miz in the face as he was leaving. It was just like such a hard strike. Anyway, he was doing this interview with Matt Striker, a great interview, where he kind of brought his personality out for the first time when he was talking about how, you know, Daniel Bryan, he's like, I don't know what this Daniel Bryan guy's all about. He can't even beat rookies, what's wrong with him? And then he said, you know, Daniel Bryan, I don't know what's going to happen to him, but Bryan Danielson, who knows what's going to happen with him. So that kind of hinted that he would kind of become Bryan Danielson now, and everyone was like, the internet was exploding about it and stuff. And on the May 31st episode of Raw, he defeated Miz in the singles match, and after the match he threw the Miz into Michael Cole, who was commentating at ringside, and then I think that led to some kind of, there was this big kind of angle between Cole and Bryan when Bryan came out in his street clothes, I guess you could say, and just beat the hell out of Cole, was kicking him in the head. It was just amazing. And then the fateful day in June 2010, Daniel Bryan, he came in with all the other NXT guys who formed the faction of Nexus, and they destroyed the ring area. It was a main event between Cena and Punk. They dismantled everything, was just breaking the announce table, just carnage. The ring ropes were being torn down, and it was just a great segment, just a real awesome segment. And Bryan took it a little bit far. He got the ring announcer Justin Roberts, and he took his tie, wrapped it around his neck, and started choking him out with it. And he was it was like a really graphic image that really wasn't suitable for PG TV. And then he kind of spat in Cena's face, said, "You're not better than me," and kicked him in the head. And on June 11th, 2010, WWE announced that they had released Daniel Bryan from the WWE. And it was because of that segment where he choked out Justin Roberts. Danielson noted that WWE apologized to him for his release, claiming that they had sponsors to deal with and it was a move they had to make. His release was put into a storyline where the rest of the NXT rookies kicked him out of the group for showing remorse for his actions and declared he would never return to the WWE again. So yeah, he was gone and everyone was gutted. I was gutted, and yeah, it was a real shame. He went back to the independent circuit. He wrestled in Evolve, it says here, IWA, all sorts of things. There's loads of different matches that he had and stuff, and basically, it was just, it was a shame to see such a great talent kind of go to the big leagues and then kind of, have to go back to the independent scene. And I think Matt Striker said in his interview with Bryan after he left NXT, he said, "How does it feel to go from being a big fish in a small pond to ultimately drowning in the sea that is the WWE or something?" And it was kind of true, but I think they knew deep down that he was really popular and that fans really wanted to see him. And again, maybe, I don't know what the thought process was, but they decided to bring him back. And at SummerSlam of that year, 2010, a few months after he was released, he came back and joined Team WWE to take on the Nexus in this huge match. And I remember I was spoiled the day after because I didn't watch it live, and I was so fucking annoyed that someone had spoiled that because I would have lost my shit if I'd saw that live. I was just so gutted. It was all over Facebook. Everyone was loving it, and it was great. He got a big moment in the match, and the big tag match, and that was a great angle as well, by the way. Really loved that, the build up to that and everything. And when it was announced he was part of the team, it was even better. And he's getting Daniel Bryan chance, and he was getting over. And from there, he really kind of went for the Miz, who was the US champion at the time, and they had a match at the next pay-per-view, United Champions, and he defeated the Miz to win the United States Championship, his first championship in the WWE, and it was a great match. I really enjoyed it. It wasn't long, but it was really good, and it just shows you how great he was, basically. And he went on to defend his US championship quite a lot. He had a champion versus champion match at Bragging Rights against the Intercontinental Champion Dolph Ziggler. That was great. They had quite a few good pay-per-view matches in 2010. Around that time, I was really just thinking that he's bringing wrestling back. Like, he's just really having fantastic wrestling matches on the card that we just haven't seen a lot of at that time. Yeah, we hadn't. No, she's not going to shut up now. Yeah, and then he lost the United States Championship on the March 14th episode of Raw, so that was in 2011, to Sheamus. So he was scheduled to have his rematch against Sheamus at WrestleMania 27. So it was the first time that he was going to have a match at WrestleMania even, and I was really excited for it. That was probably like the second match I was looking forward to after Undertaker and Triple H. So I'm sat there and watching WrestleMania 27 live, loving it. Although I was slightly annoyed because The Rock essentially opened WrestleMania with a 15-minute Raw promo that was just like, oh my god. And then Undertaker and Triple H happened, and then that was it. And I was like, hang on a minute, they're not going to put Sheamus and Bryan this late on the card, are they? I was looking on Twitter on my phone, and I heard that they'd already had their match on the pre-show, and it had turned into a lumberjack match. I was so annoyed, particularly because there was a point in that promo that The Rock did at WrestleMania 27 where he literally went, "The Rock says yabba, you say dabba." See, that's why they didn't get to wrestle, because The Rock was just kind of, taking over the show. That annoyed me. So yeah, he didn't get to wrestle at WrestleMania. Around that time, Cody Rhodes was kind of getting over with his masked gimmick, and I actually made a YouTube video where I said that Bryan should feud with Cody Rhodes because I think it would work really well for both people involved, and that's what happened. He went on to feud with Cody Rhodes for a while, but nothing really big came of that. The next big moment he had in his WWE career was on July 17th, 2011. Arguably one of the best pay-per-views that WWE have ever put out. In Money in the Bank, Bryan won the Money in the Bank match, and it was the first time I did a live reactions video. You can still see it on my channel. And you could see my face. I'm like, where's the twist? Where's the twist? What the hell's going on? There's no way in my mind that I thought he would win Money in the Bank. But he did. He kicked Wade Barrett in the head, climbed up the ladder and retrieved the briefcase. And yeah, that was it was a shock for sure. So he won Money in the Bank, and he announced that he was going to cash it in at WrestleMania for the World Heavyweight Championship, and he was going to wait and do kind of like the honourable thing. And I thought that was great because it really fitted with his character of just being like a, just loving wrestling and the purity of it and stuff like that. And then he kind of went against that and tried to cash it in on the World Heavyweight Champion, Mark Henry. And again, I'm not going to stop and read all the details, but I'm pretty sure what happened was he cashed it in on SmackDown and he won the world title. Everyone went nuts, and then it was retracted. Let me just see. Read. Yeah, here we go. Bryan cashed in. He pinned Henry. However, Teddy Long revealed that Mark Henry was not medically cleared to wrestle, so voided the match, and the briefcase was returned to Bryan. The world title was returned to Henry. So that was just like, oh. And then at TLC, Big Show challenged Mark Henry for the world title, and in a chairs match. Yeah, one of the worst stipulation matches in history, and he beat Henry with a DDT onto a steel chair. Classy. Which oh wait, no. Oh, I think that was what Bryan used. I don't know. This summary is confusing. I really can't remember. It's been quite a while and I haven't seen that pay-per-view since it happened. But yeah, Big Show beat Henry for the world title, and then Bryan came down and then pinned Big Show for the title. And they've been doing some kind of storyline on SmackDown and stuff, and he became World Heavyweight Champion. I never thought I'd see that. It was awesome. And there was a great picture backstage from that show with Punk and Bryan with their respective WWE and World Heavyweight Championships. And it was like, wow, WWE's come a long way. This is really cool. Two amazing wrestlers as the world champions. It was great. There was a storyline with AJ becoming his girlfriend and all this kind of stuff, and he was the World Heavyweight Champion. He started getting a bit cocky, and he kind of rubbed Big Show the wrong way. They got into a bit of a feud, and he kind of gradually turned heel. And but it was great when he first won it, because he was just getting up on the announcer table and just being like, yes, World Heavyweight Champion, World Heavyweight, just shoving it in Cole's face basically, and kind of tying up that storyline that started with NXT in 2010. And he was scheduled to defend his title. Yeah, I think he actually defended it a few times in big matches. I remember the Elimination Chamber 2012. He successfully defended the world title, and the last person in the match the last two was Daniel Bryan and Santino Marella. It was almost a bit of a joke really, and kind of like almost maybe a rib on Bryan, I don't know. But the thing was, it was great. It was great drama, and it was just a really good kind of match. But it was only a matter of time before he was going to lose it. He wasn't going to hold on to it for any long amount of time. So he was scheduled to defend the title against Sheamus at WrestleMania 28, a rematch from the WrestleMania 27 match that didn't happen. They opened the show with a world title match. Again, I was like, oh my god, opening match, this isn't good. The trend of the World Heavyweight title match opening the show started in 2011. I didn't like it then, I don't like it now. So it starts, and bell rings. Bryan's like, hang on a minute. calls AJ up to the ring, he gives her a kiss, turns around, walks into a bro kick from Sheamus. Sheamus pins him in like, I don't know, 18 seconds. Yeah, it was a joke, and I was really pissed off again. The second year in a row, I was really pissed off about what happened with Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania. Yeah, and it was just, but the crowd started chanting his name throughout the whole show, and they were chanting yes, yes, because this is when the whole yes thing kind of started coming into fruition. It's his gimmick, where he would, you know, throw his hands up in the air and shout yes and get the crowd to do it and stuff. But, well, not really get the crowd to do it, but they were doing it along with him, even though he was a heel. It was catching on. So we lost the, lost the world title to Sheamus, and it was just one of those things where they're like, hey, we beat a world record, or no, we beat a WWE record with a, shortest world heavyweight title match. Just so they can say, one, we beat a record, and two, yes, we got more time for The Rock and Undertaker and Triple H, which is fair enough, I guess. But it was just a shame. But ultimately, it did lead to pretty much being the best thing that ever happened to him in the WWE, because it catapulted him into a more prominent spot, I think, in terms of the fans' eyes and the way they saw him, because because of the way that the crowd reacted to WrestleMania. I haven't watched the Blu-ray back in full. So I don't know if they edited out like all the cheers and stuff. But for the first like half of WrestleMania, until the Hell in a Cell match, people were just chanting for Daniel Bryan throughout different matches and stuff, which was kind of cool. He ended up challenging Punk for the WWE title a couple of times on pay-per-view, and that was really cool. They had some great matches, but we knew that wasn't really going anywhere. It was just another opponent for Punk to beat, kind of thing. There was no question in my mind that he wasn't going to win any of those matches, but it was cool to see nonetheless, to see them headline pay-per-view together for the WWE title. So yeah, Bryan was with AJ for a long time, and on the thousandth episode of Raw, Bryan was going to have a wedding with AJ. And it ended in failure when she left him at the altar and instead accepted Vince's offer to be the permanent GM. And then basically it just it escalated from there. AJ was trying to get with Punk, trying to get with Kane, and then she went off to Ziggler, I think. I don't know. She kind of just hopped around from everyone. He got into a bit of a feud with Kane. He had a match at SummerSlam that was actually pretty good, and he won, and I thought, oh, that's cool. Nice win for him there. And it basically all ended up with them kind of doing this anger management stuff together, these skits that were pre-filmed, and they were really successful, and everyone loved them, thought they were hilarious. I thought they were just genius. I hope they released some kind of Blu-ray with all those segments, because they're golden. And they kind of were forming an unlikely team. They had this ridiculous segment on Raw where they're just standing in the middle of the ring, and they're like trying to hug it out, and they just kind of like stood there. And it was just the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen, because it was like a 10-minute segment where they're just like kind of about to hug each other and they're not quite sure. It was comedy gold, in my opinion. And then they ended up winning the WWE tag team titles. When did they do that? At Night of Champions 2012. And they went on to hold the titles for a very long time, and they became a great team. They were dubbed Team Hell No. And they had a great match against the Shield at TLC at the end of the year, in a TLC match, and that was really great. I mean, again, I'm just skating over a lot of stuff now. At WrestleMania 29, Bryan and Kane, they were just hugely popular at this point. He now changed it to no instead of yes, and that was getting over as well. He had T-shirts for that, and hence Team Hell No, I guess. And they defended the tag team titles against Dolph Ziggler and Biggie Langston, and that was great. To see him actually have a match at WrestleMania, a proper one, and win it was really great, and kind of like closing the book on those past kind of discrepancies of his WrestleMania history. And then at Extreme Rules this year, 2013, they lost the tag team titles to the Shield members Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. And that ended their reign at 245 days, which you just don't see that often in tag team titles these days. So yeah. And then we went through this period where Bryan was kind of like saying that, kind of getting really uppity about the fact that Kane thought that he was a weak link, even though Kane was saying every week I don't think you're the weak link, you know, I think you're better than you think you are and all this. And kind of, you know, building him up, but Bryan was having none of it. And it kind of got annoying after a couple of weeks where it was just the same kind of promo. And it led to Orton being brought into the mix, and you know, so the Orton kind of joined Kane and Bryan to fight the Shield and stuff. Led to Bryan kind of breaking away from Kane. They had this funny kind of breakup segment backstage, and he had a few matches with Orton, and there was that match on Raw where, you know, apparently Bryan was scheduled to beat him cleanly, which is going to be a huge win for him, but he kind of again losing some feeling in his upper limbs or something. He kind of did a suicide dive to the outside and hit the barricade, and he did the drop kick, and he couldn't move for a while. And Orton's rolling over and saying to the ref, "What the fuck is going on?" And they just called the match off, and it was this big, "Whoa, what's going on here?" And they had a rematch the next week in a great street fight match, which Bryan won. It was a really brilliant match. I'm definitely sure that match will end up on some kind of Blu-ray in the future, probably the best of Raw or something like that. Definitely a Bryan DV if that ever comes out, which it probably will by this point. And it all led to the Money in the Bank this year, where Bryan was almost about to win. You know, he had a great an amazing comeback sequence in that match. It was just ridiculous. And Curtis Axel kind of cost him the match a little. And the next night, WWE Champion John Cena, he was allowed to pick his opponent for SummerSlam this year, and he picked, you know, who everyone thought he was going to pick, because the most popular guy right now, Daniel Bryan. I'd say that Punk is probably a little bit more popular, but Bryan's kind of almost like, you know, he's the flavour of the month, you know, everyone's talking about him right now. So the match was set, Cena versus Daniel Bryan, and it is tonight. So that's been my thoughts on Daniel Bryan's WWE career so far. I can't really kind of say, oh, I've been a fan since the beginning. Well, I've been a fan since the beginning of his WWE career, but just not the indie stuff. But I am, you know, trying to go back and watch some of those matches and things like that. But for me, it's just the fact that he's just a great wrestler, and probably better than most in WWE. And the key ingredient he was missing really was that personality and character, which I think he always had, but it just needed to kind of, all the stars needed to align, and I think that happened in 2012 when he lost at WrestleMania. And the whole anger management stuff with Kane was a perfect catalyst to kind of bring some humour into his character, and also just kind of, which kind of highlighted him more, and then fans get behind him more, and just, again, his work in the ring is fantastic. He's got the best comeback of anyone in the WWE that the crowd just gets so fired up for, and I think that's built his confidence as well. And he did, in my opinion, his best promo in the WWE so far with Cena on Raw last week. It was really great, and he's been doing great promos for a while actually, and it's great to see him featured on the show. And it's great to see him in the main event for the WWE title in a match where he could conceivably win. So, yeah, there you go, my thoughts on his career in the WWE so far. Hopefully it is much longer, and we'll see some more great matches from him, some great moments. Do I think he's going to win the WWE title tonight? Maybe, but there's no way he's leaving SummerSlam with the title. Or, you know, at the very least, Orton will cash in his Money in the Bank tomorrow night on Raw. At the very least. But again, Cena could retain. You know, everyone's assuming that Daniel Bryan's going to win. I think he will, but, you know, it's very likely that Cena could retain. We'll just see what happens. But I'm sure that whatever happens, if it all goes well tonight and it's a great match and stuff, and there's a good buy rate for the pay-per-view, I'm sure we're going to see Daniel Bryan as the WWE Champion over the next few years, for sure. Unless, again, something bad happens. I think he's got a really great future ahead of him so far. So yeah, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. I might do a live reactions video, I'm not sure. We'll see what happens, and yeah, see you next time.
Yeah, he's really cool. But he's not quite as cool as you, 'cause